Hello everyone, this is Hexlex here, or as some of you know me here on Runeterra, wherever this is. Here we go, a Sorceress Lexi, and we're going to be playing, as you can tell, some Runeterra. Now, I am using a different setup than I normally do, so that is why I don't sound... My quality is probably not quite as good, well, definitely not quite as good as my previous videos have been, but that's alright. We're going to be playing a few decks here today. These videos are kind of aimed more at just getting some fundamentals of the game. We're going to be playing a few different kinds of decks across a few different kinds of videos, and we'll be taking it kind of slow. I'll be talking about all my plays, kind of my rationales behind making them. You know what? The game audio sounds a little bit quiet. Hopefully it doesn't on your end, but in case it does, I'm going to turn it up ever so slightly. Okay. So yeah, like I said, we're just going to be playing some games here. Now, I do plan on doing 4 different videos for the 4 different types of decks. When I say types of decks, I mean aggro, mid-range, control, and combo. We're going to start off with an aggro deck. We're going to use, well, I call the deck scoots, but it's normally referred to as scouts. So here's the list of the deck here, and this is kind of a pretty standard aggro deck. Basically, the idea behind aggro is that you want to rush down your opponent as quickly as possible. One of the most important things about identifying the 4 different kinds of decks, not only in terms of what kind of deck you are playing, but in the terms of also of what kind of deck your opponent is playing, is that it's going to help you. It's going to help guide you on how you want the matchup to play out. So we're an aggro deck here, which means that against control decks, well, let's start with the mirror match. We'll go in order of aggro, mid-range, control combo. So aggro versus aggro. You might think, oh, I just want to outpace them, right? Because I want to be aggressive. But the idea when you're in the mirror match is actually more that you want to kind of control the board and stop them from gaining too much of a foothill against you. In this particular deck, good tools to do that are Grizzled Ranger, because it creates a loyal Badger Bear when it dies. It can kill one of their units and then still make a good unit behind. Petty Officer makes multiple units, so we can use that for pretty efficient trading. Misfortune can clear other aggro boards pretty efficiently. War Chefs is going to be a really good early game tool. A well-timed single combat can be pretty game-winning against aggro. And Ranger's Resolve, will let us trade into a board that we might otherwise lose out on, but still get to keep our units. So against mid-range, and this is going to be the theme for pretty much every other type of deck you play against as aggro. Mid-range decks, you're going to want to try to outpace them, because they're going to try to use their bigger cards to control your board down. So we want to play as aggressively as possible. In the early game, it's still right to trade. And what I mean by trading is attacking with the purpose of getting them to block, thus trading our unit for theirs, or when they attack, trading our unit into theirs into the block. It's still right to do that early game most of the time against mid range, but pretty much past turn 3, you're going to want to start trying to push as much damage to the face as possible and try and get their life total down. Same is going to be the case for control, although control decks usually don't have many early game minions to trade with, so you really just want to go to their face as soon as possible. Control is going to be our hardest matchup because control decks can often heal the damage you do and very efficiently kill your small creatures. And then once they've done that, as they get into the later game, they play big threats that we can't deal with. So control is definitely our hardest matchup. Combo is the deck that we're favored, or the type of deck rather that we're favored against most. Against combo decks, we're basically just aiming to kill them as quickly as possible before they get their combo off, which we can usually do. So I've tried to hover over all these cards so you see all the different cards in the deck. I don't necessarily need to feel the need to talk about individual card choices now. We'll do that in game. So as not to affect my rank, I am going to be playing in normal mode, though I am in diamond, so that's about the tier of player that I'm going to be playing against here in normal mode. So not quite Masters level play, but diamond is still fairly competitive, and most normal opponents we'll be playing against will also be using competitive decks. Okay, so this is going to be a pretty... looks like a pretty typical stun deck, Yasuo Katarina. Being able to identify what kind of deck your opponent on mostly comes down to experience. A good way to do it if you don't have necessarily the experience or familiarity with the meta is to go to a tier list and kind of reference it there. So against, let's see, Ionia, Noxus, Yasuo, that's going to be kind of like a mid-range deck, plays sort of combo-y in the way it wants to level Yasuo. Don't be afraid, by the way, to take a while on your mulligans. Like, you really want to stop and think about it. So here, I definitely want to put back Genevieve Elmhart. I don't quite need Bannerman this early. I definitely want to keep Cythria for a turn 1 play. Misfortune is going to be a pretty powerful turn 3 play. Now, you will notice that I'm going to be on even attacks, which makes these a little bit more awkward, but I think it's still fine to keep these here. So not the best hand for us to be trying to play aggressive. So opponent played Navori Blade Scout turn 1. In my opinion, this is almost always a misplay. I think the power of Navori Blade Scout comes later in the game, when it can just push for free damage. Playing it on turn 1 like this doesn't really give you that much of an advantage. I'll play Cythria here, but even if this didn't have Elusive, I wouldn't take this block, because I have the Ranger's Resolve in hand, so that I can protect this next turn. I might not even do that, though, because Ranger's Resolve can give me more value later. I'll probably just wait until I can attack with Misfortune. Then they can't really block with this, because Misfortune's ability is just going to kill it. So that in mind, it's also good to bank 2 spell mana here, because I have a single combat in my hand. That way I can use this later without it interfering with the rest of my plays. So I'm totally fine with just passing here.
Think you're fast? Cute.
That doesn't really change anything I want to do here. There's no real use in single combating this now. Like, if I try to attack here, they're just going to block with Blade Scout, so I can't ever kill it this turn anyway. And we can deal with this a bit more efficiently when we have Misfortune out. So I'm just going to pass. And like I said, I'm perfectly fine banking 2 spell mana here. Okay, we got another Misfortune, which means this one, we can play our first one a little bit more loosely than we might normally. See, I was kind of thinking about in between turns there, if I wanted to play Misfortune pre or post combat. There's kind of arguments for both.
You'll thank me later.
Ideally, though, we'd want to play it pre-combat only if they play out a lot of minions, which kind of looks like they're going to do. If they just entered combat with 3 spell mana, well, obviously I couldn't play it, but I'm even still a little hesitant to play it here because they could have a trick going into the combat here. They're on 2 mana, so that would be the one that deals the damage to a minion to give another one +2/+2 is what I'm thinking of. But since we drew a second Misfortune, I'm pretty okay playing this one and blocking something kind of loosely here, because even if this dies, we can play another one. The second one also turns into Make It Rain, which is not the worst card here, but I'm probably not going to play it. It's also very important to stay hydrated while you play. I know it's a meme. I know drink water is a meme, but it's actually genuinely important to have like water, or I guess in my case juice, nearby while you play, because if you're even a little bit thirsty or hungry or have to go to the bathroom, honestly that's going to interfere with your play. I'm not even kidding when I say that. I know that sounds really tryhardy, but it's true. So this doesn't really change my play. I could single combat this Navori Conspirator down. Also, don't be afraid to take as much time as I am during your turns. Like, you might be thinking, oh, my opponent is so annoyed, but, like, what's the worst that's going to happen? They get so annoyed they concede, that's fine. And the game affords you the time to think about your plays, and you really should take advantage of it. Never feel like you're burdening your opponent. If they're a serious player like you, they're ready to, like, play the game, and this is part of it. If that makes any sense. Okay, so let's see what we've got here. There's a part of me that's thinking about single combating my Misfortune into this Blade Twirler, because it's only going to get stronger, but it's always only going to have 3 health, so we can do that at pretty much any time. Our opponent's got no mana, so they don't really have a counter if we do that. That sounds kind of crazy, but like I said, we have a second Misfortune in hand. This prevents 3 damage. Oh, we could also Ranger's Resolve and just block it.
Get ahead of yourself.
Right? Because then it takes 3, we go to 1. Yeah, we're just going to do that. That was actually definitely the better play. I didn't need to think about that as long as I did. Well, that's not necessarily true. Ranger's Resolve can be good against AoE, but Nox doesn't really have any damage AoE, and Ionia definitely doesn't. I think Nox does, but even if Nox does, this isn't the deck that really typically plays it. You could think about using Ranger's Resolve against Yasuo's ability, but that's so far off that I'm not really concerned about it. So we got Fleet Feather Tracker, which is going to be a really good play with his Laurent Protege. We can pretty much just clear their minions, especially given that we have Misfortune here. So I'm pretty okay with this. I'm sorry if I am going a bit fast. I'd like to think I'm keeping a good pace and trying to explain what I do. Ooh, this is actually fine. I was not planning on attacking with Misfortune anyway. Well, that's not true. If I had challengered both the things, they couldn't have known I have two challengers, though. I don't think this stun is correct. I think they should have stunned the Fleet Feather Tracker. That would have interfered with my plays a lot more. I'm totally okay with this.
Strength and grace, beauty in the play.
Well, I guess I should say that might not actually be wrong considering that I play this, but there's no way you can know I have the Laurent Protege, especially since I only play one of it, and this deck doesn't always play this card. So, let's see. Let's do this, and then we'll drag... Oh, we can't drag this. That's fine. We kill these two. Make a lot of good use of the eye, by the way. This tool is a lot more useful than... Because, like, at least I always get caught in this trap where I think I know how the turn's going to play out, so I don't look at the eye, and then I get surprised. But the eye's here. There's no reason not to use it. So this looks like a pretty good board state for us. I'm totally fine with this attack. They can't do anything because they don't have any mana. This is pretty advantageous? I feel like I never say that word correctly. So, like, you can also see that our opponents, they have 2 cards on board and 3 cards in hand. We have 3 cards on board and 3 cards in hand. A common card game term is called advantage. And basically that just kind of means the total amount of resources we have exceed the total amount of resources our opponent has right now. So when I say something like we have advantage, so we're pretty well positioned right here, that's kind of what I'm referring to. I guess I didn't say it, but I was about to say it. I figured I'd explain that. Like, keep in mind, this is still another Misfortune, too. Okay, so here comes Katarina. I definitely want to take care of that. I can do that with single combat. I'm trying to think what they could have that would kind of make that a bad play. Noxian Fervor is probably the big... So I'm about to use a term called scare card here. Noxian Fervor is the scare card here. Basically, before we make a play, we kind of want to think about, okay, what could our opponent reasonably have that would be kind of the worst case scenario response? And, oh, well, they can't Noxian Fervor. Sorry, I thought they had a spell mana. So they actually can't do that here. So I think we're going to wait until combat. No, I'm actually going to do this now. This might be a bit risky, but I think this is going to be fine. Blade's Edge here is totally fine because I can just play another Misfortune. So there goes their Katarina. So we did lose card advantage on that. That is kind of important to note. But that's definitely not the end of the world here, especially considering that we just got rid of one of their champions, and the fact that they haven't tried to go more into Yasuo kind of tells me that they, A, don't have Yasuo, and B, don't have a lot of stun cards, which kind of means the whole point of their deck isn't really going to do a whole lot here. I'm just going to skip this block. I don't care about taking 2 damage. I'd much rather keep this Laurent Protege, because I can Challenger this and kill it next turn. So I'm going to start by playing the Cythria, see if they do anything, and then I'm going to play Misfortune. And the reason I want to do that is because if I just throw out Misfortune, I mean, there's not a lot they could do with 1 mana, but if they have any amount of mana, you kind of want to be thinking about what could they do, what can I do to evoke an answer from them that would be better than, or that would be worse for them. God. I totally just lost track of that sentence, like that thought mid-sentence. You know what I mean, though. Basically, we want to play our weaker stuff first and hope they respond to it before we play our stronger cards, is what I was getting at. So this turn, I'm looking to Brightsteel Protector plus Relentless Pursuit, and I think I gotta think about which unit I want to give barrier here, because I'm getting 2 attacks in. That's something to keep in mind. I can challenger this and just kill it. They would block. That leaves them only able to block with this. There's no good block with that. So I'm gonna go ahead and give Misfortune barrier because I think that's the unit they're most likely to target, and this makes it a little more safer. Plus, it's also the most valuable unit on our board for sure. It is important to note that we're running kind of low on cards, and this is one of the not faults. What's the word I'm looking for? This is kind of one of the issues you can run into with aggro decks, is that around this point in the game, you kind of start to run out of steam, which makes your board a lot more valuable. And it's why early in the game, it's better to keep your board if possible, so that you're not left with no board and no hand here. Okay, so I think this is still right. We can definitely attack with this. And I think we can attack with both of these. If they want to trade their Navori Conspirator into either of these minions, I'm totally okay with that. I know I just said that trading isn't not something we want to do, but this is just going to represent a threat of damage to over time. Plus, they had to recall their own unit to play it, which, yeah, they're going to get the playability again, but they also lost tempo doing that. And when I say they lost tempo, I mean that they lost some board presence that... Oh, this is actually really good. Oh, wait, no, it's not. Never mind. When I say they lost tempo, it means they lost board presence, which means that they're going to have a harder time clearing my board because they recalled their own unit. Then again, the play could matter. The playability could matter here, so it's kind of even. I don't really know how that's going to play out yet. Okay, so we have the Relentless Pursuit to think about. Let's see what they play here. If they play something with like 2 or less health that I really want to kill, then I can just Relentless Pursuit. Hey, look at that. It's almost like I'm Psychic or something. Yeah, now we can just Relentless Pursuit. They don't have any mana to counter. We'll just Challenger it and kill it, and then attack with our other 2 power thing here. Easy peasy. And we get another level up on Misfortune. Leveling Misfortune is very good in this deck, and in general. A level of Misfortune should win you the game pretty much every single time. So their hand is Mentor and like 2 random cards. We have a strong card, Misfortune, a decent body, and we just got a really good... That's probably the best card we could have drawn, actually, in this situation. You know, honestly, I think they're probably out of it. I think that was actually just the best card we could have drawn.
Alright, let's mess some folks up.
Don't let the fluffy tails fool you.
That's fine. If they attack with this, I'm not going to block it. Which is kind of something I did earlier that I didn't really talk about. I mean, I touched on it briefly, but just because you can take a trade does not mean you always should. Like, we're still at 14. If they attack for 2 with this, there's no reason to chump. And when I say chump, I mean throw in a creature in a block that we know is going to die without killing theirs. There's no reason to do that here. Or back there on their turn. They didn't even take the attack anyway, though. I guess I could have blocked it with Misfortune, but if they would have attacked, I wouldn't have even blocked with Misfortune, because that kind of represents a combat trick, or because they could get a combat trick to kill it. Since they didn't take the attack, I kind of know they don't have a fast spell that could deal with Misfortune blocking this, which can inform us on this play. I mean, I make a 1-cost minion here anyway with Petty Officer, but that means it's a bit safer for us to attack than we might have first suspected. And this is kind of what you want to be thinking about pretty much every single game. It sounds like a lot. Ooh. That's like the best card they could have had there. Yikes. Okay. But that's something you want to be doing, like I said, pretty much every single game. Is just thinking about all these different outs and plays. And it's a lot. It is a lot. But the more you do it, the more used to it you get. Let's see. I think I'm going to attack with Petty Officer, because they're probably just going to block with this, which is fine. It gets a blocker, a potential chump blocker out of the way later. This would obviously be a fine block for me. And even this, Yone blocking this would be ideal, because then I could trade maybe Grizzler into it later, or Grizzled Ranger. Jeez. There's no need to attack with either of these. We can chump block with them later, and if Yone or Bleator blocks them, it doesn't really do anything for us. We do want to attack here to try to level Misfortune, though. Because we know they don't have a fast answer, it's pretty sure at this point that we're going to be able to level Misfortune. Unless they top deck an answer in the next 2 turns, which could happen. It could always happen. But at the same time, you have to try to figure out how reasonable that is. Oh my goodness. Legion General. Oh, it's got Fearsome. Oh, I thought I had Trample. That's a lot less scary. I thought this card was going to kill me for a second. Yeah, if this had Trample, that'd be... 10 attack with Trample is pretty threatening because all of our stuff is pretty low toughness. But I can just chump block with Grizzled Ranger here. That's fine. Or actually, I can just chump block with the Islander at this point, now that I've buffed with Bannerman. It's also worth noting that I'm pretty sure Misfortune is the only bilge cards we have in this deck, which increases our allegiance odds for Bannermen by a lot. Yeah, they're just going in with a lot of stuff here. But that's actually kind of not the greatest block on their part. Because, like, okay. We'll block this here. Misfortune is going to level next turn. Because I'm just going to open attack. Now, let's block this here. Taking 8 seems like a lot here, and it kind of is. The problem is I don't really want to chump with anything else. Like, there's no point in chumping into this. It's not going to take any... I guess there is a point. It's to not take 6 damage. Which could matter here. 6 is just low enough that I'm probably not going to take that. Actually, we can just chump with this. Actually, we should chump with this and put this here to do 1 more damage here. Yeah, I'm totally cool with this block. Also, talking your plays out loud is genuinely extremely helpful. That's no joke one of the reasons that streamers do as well as they do. It's not a major factor, but it is definitely a factor. So there's a legitimate thought here of, do we play Warships? This seems like a snap play, but if they have a slow card, which is pretty easy for them to have here, like a slow card that wrecks us, like Reckoning, I'm not going to take this attack because I just want Misfortune to get in there. So I'm definitely attacking with Bannermen. They can't really block with these. If they block here, we can attack with this and this. So we'll just attack with everything except Misfortune. Now Misfortune flips.
All eyes on me.
And like I said, the vast majority, like 95% of the time, you should win after MF flips. Looks like they did have a fast card. So Warships ended up being the right play, but we only know that because we entered combat and they played a fast card. You can't beat yourself up for a quote-unquote misplay like that, because it's not even a misplay. In a vacuum, the card that did the most, or what am I trying to say? The card that caused us to lose most of the time was Reckoning there. So, or that card that caused most of a blowout. So this did end up being a fine block. That's a little annoying, the deny, but it's still totally fine. Because now we still have chump blockers up for their units. Like, you can't even really attack with these two freely because I can just kill them now. And notice how, like, oh my god, that's such a good top deck. So we have gotten a couple of pretty good top decks, but notice how from the very beginning, all of the decisions that we've been making up to this point have led us to this game state where we're becoming slightly more and more favored over time. You shouldn't be looking to try to do huge swingy turns every single turn, because if you do that, you're going to leave yourself open to a lot of small counterplays.
With me.
It's more like you just want to take this gradual, it's like baby steps. You know, the game can be won in one grand swooping turn, but it's more often than not won by getting these small incremental values of advantage over the course of the whole game. Opponent's open attacking here, but yeah, I was just about to say they're going to start peeling their minions back as they realize this is not as great of an attack as they want it to be. So we're definitely going to chump this, this, and this. Well, this isn't even really chumping. This is trading. Because, again, we're trading our minion for theirs. This is a chump because we're not killing their minion. They don't have any cards, so they can't do anything, so we're cool with this. Notice, by the way, that I haven't even addressed like this 8-3 right here. Because you might look at this and be like, oh my god, that's an 8 attack minion. That's so scary. But it's not. It's really not. There's no way it can threaten us here because it has 3 health. I was going to say, if they have another deny here, that's a little annoying. But this deck often doesn't play more than 1 deny. Even the 1 deny isn't always a thing in this deck. So I wanted to get my scout attack before I played this, even though it is a scout unit, because I wanted to make sure I could kill... Yeah, there's a surrender. I wanted to make sure that I could kill the 8-3 before they could have a chance to do anything about it, with like a minion giving it a buff or a slow spell. So that's a pretty good example of an aggro game. We can go ahead and do one more, I think. Yeah, let's do one more in normal mode. Ooh, Luxheimer. This is actually a pretty good example of a control deck. So, we're not horribly unfavored, but we're not necessarily statistically favored to win this match. Statistics are important to keep in mind, but at the same time, you can't let them rule you. Even if you're not favored, that doesn't mean you should be like, oh, I guess I can just give up this game. You should always try to win every single time. Which, that sounds like a duh. That doesn't sound like advice that needs to be given, but it actually is. It's pretty easy, and even I do this a fair bit of the time. It's pretty easy to fall into like this defeatist attitude mid-game, where you just kind of give up, but you really should be trying to play to your out every single time. And like I said, that is something that I've been guilty of before. So the main reason I didn't keep Senna there is because we don't attack on odds. But I wanted to keep a 1-drop even though we don't attack on turn 1, just so we can have something to do on turn 1. Aggro decks, you really want to value keeping all your early stuff. You would think that would be the case with every deck, but it's actually not. It does depend on what kind of a deck you're playing.
Got your back.
So this is a fine play even though they don't have anything on board, because yeah, they can't play anything with 2 or less health without losing it here.
Deal is yours.
Which lets us just get in for 5 damage. They look like they didn't have anything anyway, but they usually wouldn't. They're probably just going to play Remembrance this turn. Yep, and the reason I knew that is because they passed pretty quickly on turns 1 and 2, which means they probably kept this in their opening, have been planning to play this on turn 3 since the start. There's nothing we can do about it, so yeah. This is probably one of the better results for us. For Remembrance, there's this, the 5-5 with Scout. There's the 5-4 with Challenger that creates an elite when it dies. And then, oh, what's the last one? It's a 5-5 tough, that's right. And note that Radiant Guardian will get its buff if you played off Remembrance if a unit died that turn. So here, let's toss out Misfortune.
Strike for justice.
And we can block with this 3-2 because we'll just Challenger it with a 2-1 next turn. If I didn't have a clean trade within 2 turns like this, ooh, that's an even cleaner trade. And what I mean by clean trade is an efficient way to kill it without losing out really on any card advantage. Well, we'll play the other Fleet Feather Tracker first.
Contain the arcane.
Ooh, that's kind of scary. Oh, okay, they played down to 0 mana. So there's not gonna be anything that contests us. And that's actually something important to keep in mind, is watching how much mana your opponent has, not only to see if they can contest your units, but what they can contest it with. Because if they have a specific amount of mana and spell mana up, you can look at their regions and champions, and with this information alone, it's not too hard to guess what your opponent has in their deck. You just got to keep in mind, again, the 4 different kinds of decks, which is why it's so important. Everything comes back, like when it comes to knowing your matchups, knowing how you should play your deck, knowing how you should play each individual hand, knowing what your opponent has. Everything comes down to these 4 different types of decks, which is why I think it's an important fundamental to learn.
Control the mage.
To control their magic.
Let's see. I'll just play Grizzled Ranger here. We have 2, and it's good blocker here. Oh, I'm surprised they attack with that. So we'll block here and here to trade for this, and again, 3 minus 5 is 2. Which, like, duh, right? Like, of course, that's basic math, but it helps to say that kind of math out loud, especially if you're someone like me who's terrible at math. Mystic Shot is fine here. I don't care about this at all. Well, it's a little annoying, but it was going to die to that Mystic Shot either way. Plus, it's better that than one of these Fleet Feather Trackers here. That is actually kind of odd now that I think about it. That makes me suspect that they might have another Mystic Shot or a fast answer like that in their hand. Because this 3/3 doesn't really do a whole lot for them. And I can block it efficiently with a 3/4. That's a suspicious Mystic Shot. That's something to keep in mind. That's going to be a Genevieve here. Pretty easy Genevieve. Actually, it's not an easy Genevieve because we had Cithria too. I didn't even... Honestly, I played that a little loosely. I didn't even really think about
You worry about me?
Cithria here. It's not that Cithria would have been good because the Fearsome doesn't matter, but let's see. So I'm going to do a Scout attack. I'm going to specifically drag this in so that I can make an attack with this next turn as well. And then I'll drag in the 6/2 to kill it. This is important to do it in this order because this lets me 2 for 1 these 2 minions here with this one. Oh, they surrendered. They're tired of me waiting. That is going to happen in normal. I'm actually a little peeved that that happened.
Fortune smiles.
But we were looking pretty good. I was about to say on our next turn that... Or not on our next turn. I was about to say throughout the rest of that turn that we had a pretty good chance of leveling Misfortune that game. And as I've said a couple of times now, if you flip Misfortune, game's pretty much over after that. So I think that's going to about do it for the aggro section here. Next time we're going to play a mid-range deck, and we'll talk about the different ways that that deck plays against various kinds of decks. So thanks for watching. This is Hexlex, signing out. Have a good day.